Hello and welcome to this week's episode of For the Love of Chiropractic. I'm your host, Dr. Robert Freeman. On this week's episode of Resources for Your Success, we're going to talk about your number one resource for success and protecting that resource to make sure that it can provide for you and your family throughout your entire professional career. And what is this resource? It's you and your ability to practice. So on today's show, we'll be speaking with Mr. Aaron Brooker, an expert in disability insurance. Welcome to Season 3 of For the Love of Chiropractic. Season 1 has 60 episodes of practice management tips to help you build the best practice possible. Season 2, 3 keys of my success, 50 interviews with the most successful chiropractors from around the world. Season 3, resources for your success. So let's listen up and learn how to build a great business. So I had the opportunity to catch up with Mr. Aaron Brooker by phone. Aaron, are you there?
Dr. Freeman, thank you.
All right. I am so glad you were able to make the time to share your knowledge and wisdom with us today. As we talked about in the introduction, disability insurance is your world. And you know, having been a practicing chiropractor for 30 plus years, I've had a policy for many years. But let's jump right in. Explain why it's so important to have disability insurance.
That's a great setup. Thanks so much. Everybody kind of sorts through insurance products differently. Life insurance, everybody's aware of, they buy that. But the reality is the chances of you not being able to work are a lot greater than the chances of somebody passing away early on. And so disability insurance is very practical. That's why these policies are expensive, but it's important because your income is the vehicle helping you accomplish your goals. If you think about just where you want to go in life, they all probably involve your ability to make money and your ability to make more and more money as you just advance and grow in your career. And that is why protecting it is important. Right.
Well, and I look at disability insurance and life insurance as sort of the same thing on the opposite side of the coin. Personally, I'm a believer in term life insurance, and the reason, and there's reasons for lots of different kinds of insurance policy, and that's not what we're spending our time talking about today. I like term insurance because I look at it as a mission. The mission is to raise my family. God forbid I had gotten taken out of the picture. Okay, how's my family going to be able to, my children be raised, and my wife go on and live her life? And that's the purpose of insurance at its root. And I think disability insurance is the same thing on the opposite side of the coin. Okay, well, you don't get killed. You're still living. Okay.
Yep.
But you're not able to earn an income. Now what?
Well, the problem with disability insurance is people aren't thinking about it when you're 25, 30 years old and feel somewhat invincible.
Sure.
Like when I'm 30 years old, I'm like, hey, the only thing that's going to keep me from work is, a car accident. But this isn't car accident insurance. Like these policies actually become the foundation for a good financial plan when you're 45 years old and there's a weird cancer scare you weren't expecting or some autoimmune disease that you can't figure out how to treat. Like this is the policy that's going to keep things afloat during that rough season of life. When you're young and your family's beginning, you can imagine what would happen if I'm not here, and term life insurance is the best way to solve that problem. And that's all I do is term life insurance. And that's just as a courtesy to my customers who are already sorting through this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like disability insurance is really my focus, and setting it up early on is just hard to imagine not being able to work, but you're setting yourself up for good protection when the family, is in private school and there's vacation homes or whatever else is happening at that stage of life.
Well, the other thing is, as a chiropractic physician, the way that we do our jobs, we are using our entire bodies.
Mm-hmm.
So, God forbid you break an arm, and I'm sure we'll get into, waiting times and things like that as we get further into this conversation. But, God forbid you break an arm, lose an arm, break a leg, lose a leg, end up in a wheelchair. Suddenly, how are you standing around a chiropractic table and adjusting people the way that you do right now in practice?
Yeah, no, that's your livelihood. Yep.
Right. And, when I talk to clients, it's one of the things that I always talk about. Okay, the way that you like to practice, the business that you're in requires your entire body.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm sure that's one of the things that you discuss, with clients all the time. But one of the things specifically that I wanted to touch base on is, well, actually, before we dig into that, tell me about on policies. What is the waiting periods for policies to kick in? Because obviously it's not I sprained my ankle, so I'm out of work for a week. I don't imagine that's a disability policy.
Well, they do have short-term disability policies, but I think an emergency fund is a better way to solve some of those problems. Let's just run through a couple important policy features, including benefit periods and waiting times and so forth.
Oh, yeah, please do.
So here's what I think chiropractors should look for in their policies. And there's only a certain number of carriers that can provide all of this. Now, in the disability world, any coverage is going to be better than no coverage. Like the coverage you have is infinitely better than the coverage you need. But if you were going to hand pick a policy, you would probably want to get a policy that's called own occupation. So these policies will have language that says they could pay disability benefits if you couldn't do your job in medicine, even if you're able to still, start a podcast or do some consulting or teach or something else like that. Like you could double dip with some of these policies. Okay. I think that's important because, like you said, you spend a lot of time and energy and money investing in yourself. And so you want to protect your livelihood with an own occupation policy. Another feature you can get on these policies is getting a policy that's called non-cancelable and guaranteed renewable. They don't all have this. It's not going to be on every carrier's policy, but you can get policies that are not going to raise prices on you. It's a fixed rate, okay, and it's going to stay that price for as long as you pay for the coverage. There are two triggers that can affect the prices on here. That would be your waiting time and then your benefit period. And so the waiting time is how long you have to be out of work or how long your job is affected until the disability benefits pay you.
And what are those typical amounts of time? Again, because I'm sure it's not a weekend.
Typically 90 days is typical.
Okay, so about 3 months.
3 months. You're kind of on your own. You've burned through your emergency fund. It's pretty obvious this guy's having troubles with work. Yeah, 90-day elimination period is typical. Then the benefit period, how long you would receive benefits for, typically long-term disability benefits pay until you're 65. I'll say this, if you want to get into this later, there are a few carriers that for chiropractors will only pay claims for 5 years.
Really?
Yeah, that's not, like I said, any coverage is better than no coverage.
No, right, absolutely.
Dr. Freeman, to be honest with you, that's how I set my own policy up after leaving education. Is I was like, man, they wheeled guys with diapers and a voice box into a classroom as a substitute teacher. Like if things were really bad, I could find some sort of employment. And so I set my own policy up that would pay a claim I set it up for 10 years, but you can set it up for 5 years, 10 years, or some policies will pay you through the age of 65. The reason I limited how long I would receive benefits is I just wanted to get the kids out of the house, similar to term life insurance.
Sure.
Most illnesses and injuries people recover from. When you're 30, the only thing you can imagine is a permanent disability preventing you from work. But the reality is, like, there's fatigue, there's unknown answers, there's surgery recoveries, and people are back to work after a year or two. And you would want to be back to work if you could work. Like, there's dignity in doing that. You'd make more money working than disabled. And so the benefit periods for a lot of chiropractic policies pay for 5 years. We do have options that could pay you through the age of 65. But that adjusts the cost also.
Sure.
And then the other thing you can look into, there's partial disabilities could be paid out if you had to work part-time for a reason. Some of the policies will pay for partial disabilities. And then there's inflation protection. Like if you were permanently disabled, the paychecks would not be fixed. Your disability checks would get bigger every year they pay you a disability claim. So
these different things that you're talking about, similar to term life insurance, are there clauses and riders that can be added? So the waiting, or almost like a deductible on a car insurance. So the longer the waiting period, I assume that brings the premium down somewhat. The length of time, So all of those things.
All of those things can affect the cost. The other thing affecting the cost is going to be, your age, your gender, your state, and your job. Those are the four factors that are going to determine the rate, and then however we arrange features, that's also adjustable.
So, okay, I'm sorry. Say those four one more time. Age, gender, what were the other two?
State and occupation.
Okay. So I'm curious, how does gender change the risk? And I know it's based on actuarial tables.
Yeah, you're going to get me in trouble. If you were shopping for life insurance, your wife's life insurance is cheaper than yours because men do stupid stuff. Events happen, they die.
And we know we die younger. Yes.
Yeah, and women have survivability. Like automatically, people ask me about childbearing years and all of that. It's just women have survivability and stuff. They just tend to miss more work because of those things, and so some of that could be childbearing related, some of it not. But there's different cancers and so forth, and it is all just come down to math. And
right.
Women end up on more claims. That's
really interesting. Yeah, I was not trying to get anybody in trouble or be labeled a sexist or anything. When you said from a disability insurance, like that's I wonder why that is, and obviously it has to be a math problem. So, yeah, that makes sense. So now I want to double back because I know you've been doing this for a bunch of years, but this was not your first career.
Yeah, I taught middle school, here in the rough part of Omaha, but I was a middle school teacher for 14 years before I moved over into this. So out of college, I taught from, 2005 to 2019.
And before we started recording, when you mentioned that, you said something that it literally just made me stop and laugh out loud. You were talking about working with clients and the different situations versus dealing with the students and their parents, and which was more difficult.
Yeah, that's what I said. I have some agent friends, and they really don't like getting on phone calls with different doctors and physicians and explaining that there's some health issues adversely affecting their policy. And I just said that is lightweight compared to having some upset parents across the table from you in a room. So.
Right, because with all of us, when it comes to our kids, we know our kids are perfect angels. Somehow the teachers see it differently sometimes.
Sometimes that's the way it went. You bet.
All right.
My skin got pretty thick teaching all those years.
I can imagine. So you're on Easy Street now, working with helping doctors with disability insurance.
Yeah, it feels like it sometimes.
So, do you work with one company, or you work with multiple companies? How do you put a doctor into a policy?
So I'm an independent broker. So if you backed up, 15 years, most of these policies were sold by financial advisors, and it's a wise product. Financial advisors want to protect the assets that they're managing for clients. Now, it's somewhat commoditized in the sense that it's easy to shop online, and independent brokers can run policies from several carriers for you. And so that is what we do, is just, sometimes that's based on health, but usually we can get a couple quotes from different carriers for a client, so that they can see some slight nuance in definitions and features. Mm-hmm. And there's 4 or 5 good policies for chiropractic, standalone policies for chiropractors.
Now, what do you mean by standalone policy for chiropractor? What does that mean?
So it would not be like a group policy that is offered by a larger employer. This is your policy to go with you wherever you go for whatever you do.
So I'm going to share something with you, and I hate to put you on the spot. But we did not really discuss this in either of our previous conversations. So, I finished chiropractic school back in 1990. And as I went into practice and was looking to get my first disability policy, I was told by the agent back then that there had been this huge upheaval in disability policies for chiropractors specifically, because chiropractors who were about a generation ahead of me they had all, I won't say all, a bunch of them had taken policies. And then they were just signing off on each other that they were disabled. And the insurance company said, we're not playing that game. And so there was at least a short period of time where it was very difficult for a chiropractor to get a policy that would give them good coverage. What's the state of the industry today with that piece of history behind us?
Well, so there are residual effects of that, and that happened before I got into the space. Similarly, that happened 15, 20 years ago with like mental health related claims. And so most of the policies I set up will only pay, for outpatient psychiatric issues for 2 years if something happened.
Interesting.
And so that's just because of the same thing. Like, hey, my buddy can sign off on this, and we can stay on a claim, and now we can golf and receive some disability benefits.
Well, and golfing can be therapeutic, or it can, or going golfing can cause you to need psychiatric care. Yeah. I've been on both sides of that coin.
I figured it would come up. I was hoping maybe we didn't ask. Like, it is a little bit trickier to get a chiropractor a policy just from the actuarial standpoint than, internal medicine or a hospitalist or some of those other specialties. And there's a few elements of that. One is there's occupational demands that you mentioned earlier, and just the demands of using your hands and how to determine, hey, can this guy get back to work? Who do we need to talk to see if we're at the point where this guy could, use his shoulders or his arms? Like, I have a friend who's a chiropractor, and he broke his clavicle, and that was really difficult for him to miss a couple months of work while everything healed up. Now, the other side is just different types of treatment options. And, some chiropractors would be a little bit more inclined to some alternative treatment practices that are hard to quantify and measure from an insurance actuarial standpoint. And so there's some hesitations there to say, like, hey, what sort of treatment plan is going to get us to the point where we're back to work? And is this something that, is certified or regulated in some way that everybody's okay with?
Gotcha. So it sounds like you have worked with chiropractors helping to get disability policies in place for them.
There are very good options, but some of the carriers limit what those options look like compared to like I said, some of those other medical professionals.
Sure.
Sure.
Okay. So different question. So obviously you are licensed to work in Omaha. Are you licensed in all 50 states?
All 50 states. Oh yeah. I'm talking to people all over the country all day long.
All right. So someone's in whatever, Florida, East Coast, Northwest, you're still the guy.
We will run all the quotes for that state and compare their options side by side so they can see the quotes and the differences in language and understand what those choices look like.
Fantastic. All right. So Aaron, this has been amazing, the information that you shared, and I've learned things that I didn't know before. Sadly, time is beginning to run out on us. Is there anything that we have not talked about that you think we should, that I didn't ask about?
There's a whole other segment for business policies that would probably be worth getting into for a couple of your listeners, and just some hacks and some tricks around protecting your business or protecting your employees that could make sure that there's good options if somebody doesn't qualify for an individual policy. I don't know if you want to get into that now or if you wanted to keep going about that.
Well, I'll tell you what. Go ahead and give me the highlights of business policies, and you and I will do a second episode and talk about that more specifically.
Yeah. Overview is your own income is the most important thing. I mean, your family is worth protecting, and so buying your own policy is step number one. But it's also important for your employees and the people that, are working around you. And so there are ways you can protect their paychecks, either through business overhead expense policies or by offering them an opportunity to get in on some of their own policy. Like if you had several employees that wanted to buy their own private policy, I can use that to get a 20% discount on the doctor's coverage.
Got it. All right. You and I will cover that in more detail on a future episode. That is absolutely fantastic. Mr. Aaron Brooker, I can't thank you enough for taking the time and making the time. So I have to ask one more question. If somebody wants to get in touch with you because they know they need disability insurance or perhaps even business insurance, how would they get in touch with you?
The easiest way would be to just jump on leveragerx.com, and we have just a simple quote request button. We don't need a whole lot of info to get started, but that'll direct them to my calendar.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And Aaron, I'll look forward to speaking to you in the very near future.
This is a lot of fun. Thank you, Dr. Freeman.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. And that's our show for today. If you have a question about today's show or your own practice, feel free to reach out at fortheloveofchiropractic.com. Before making changes to your practice, be sure to seek legal advice regarding those changes and regulations in your state. For the Love of Chiropractic is an RGF production, all rights reserved. And thanks for listening. Original music provided by Hunter Rich Music.